I was genuinely excited about my younger brother Tyler's engagement party. The venue was spectacular, an upscale hotel ballroom with crystal chandeliers and white roses everywhere. I had helped put Tyler through college when our parents hit financial trouble, so seeing him happy meant everything to me. But when I arrived, the event planner directed me to sit by the gift table away from my family. My confusion turned to pain when I overheard my parents agreeing with the bride's father that I wasn't successful enough to sit with the prominent guests. As I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had family underestimate your worth. Growing up, there was an 8-year age gap between Tyler and me, but we were always close. When he was just 10 and I was 18, our parents went through some financial difficulties that shook our middle-class stability. I had just started college with a partial scholarship, working nights to cover the rest of my expenses. Those were tough years, but I never complained. By the time Tyler was ready for college, our parents had somewhat recovered financially, but not enough to cover his education at the prestigious business school he had his heart set on. Without hesitation, I stepped in. I had just started my career as a business consultant and was making decent money, though nothing extravagant. I lived in a modest apartment and drove an old car so that I could help Tyler with his tuition and expenses. I wanted him to focus on his studies without the burden of student loans or part-time jobs. "You're going to be someone important someday, Tyler," I told him when I gave him his first semester check. "All I ask is that you work hard and remember family is what matters most." Tyler graduated with honors and quickly landed a job at a major corporation. His career took off rapidly, his natural charm and the connections he made at school opening doors I never had access to. I was proud of him, genuinely proud, without a hint of jealousy. I continued my work as an independent business consultant, building a solid, if unspectacular, career. My clients respected me, and I enjoyed the work helping companies improve their efficiency and profitability. What my family never fully understood was that my modest exterior hid a growing professional reputation. I preferred not to talk about my clients or my work at family gatherings. When relatives asked, I would just say things were going fine and change the subject. It wasn't false modesty so much as a desire to keep my professional and personal lives separate. About a year ago, Tyler called me with exciting news. He had met someone special, a woman named Jessica Lawrence. The name immediately rang a bell. Lawrence. As in Harold Lawrence's daughter? I asked, surprised. "You know about the Lawrences?" Tyler seemed equally surprised that I recognized the name. "Harold Lawrence is pretty well known in real estate circles," I explained. "The Lawrences were what old money would call new money, and what new money would simply call rich." Harold Lawrence had built a real estate empire over the last 20 years, with properties across 3 states. His company, Lawrence Properties, was known for flashy developments and aggressive business tactics. Harold himself had a reputation for extravagance, from his collection of rare sports cars to the lavish parties he threw at his mansion. Jessica was his only child, and from what I gathered through Tyler's stories, she had been raised with every privilege imaginable. Private school, summers in Europe, an executive position at her father's company straight out of college. She was beautiful, charming when she wanted to be, and accustomed to getting her way. I met her a few times before the engagement, and while she was polite enough, there was always something slightly dismissive in the way she looked at my modest clothes or asked about my little consulting business. Still, Tyler was clearly in love, and I wanted to be supportive. When they announced their engagement 6 months ago, I was the first person Tyler called. She said, "Yes, Alvin, can you believe it?" His voice bubbled with excitement. "That is fantastic news, Tyler. I am really happy for you," I said, meaning it despite my reservations about the Lawrences. The engagement party was scheduled for the following month at the Grand Plaza, one of the most exclusive hotels in the city. I knew it would be expensive and offered to contribute despite my tight budget that month. "That is really generous, Alvin, but Mr. Lawrence insists on handling everything," Tyler told me. I still wanted to get them something special as an engagement gift. After careful consideration, I found a first edition of a book that Tyler had loved as a child, the one I used to read to him when our parents were working late. It cost nearly a month's rent, but seeing his face when he opened it would be worth every penny. What Tyler and my family did not know was that my little consulting business had recently landed me a significant contract with Westfield Developments, one of the largest commercial real estate developers in the country. Part of my job was to evaluate potential partnerships and acquisition targets, including a $7.2 million deal with Lawrence Properties that Harold had been pursuing aggressively for months. The night before the engagement party, I was up late reviewing the Lawrence Properties proposal. Something felt off about the numbers, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I decided to sleep on it and make my final recommendation after the weekend. I spoke with Tyler that same evening, and he seemed distracted and nervous, not his usual confident self. "Everything okay with the party preparations?" I asked. Yeah, all good. Mr. Lawrence has handled everything. It is going to be amazing," Tyler replied quickly, then changed the subject. "Hey, what are you wearing tomorrow?" "My navy suit, probably." "Why?" "Just wondering," he said, then added hastily. "The navy one with the thin lapels. Maybe wear something else if you have it." I thought it was an odd request, but didn't press the issue. Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs. The Grand Plaza lived up to its name. The ballroom was decorated with thousands of white roses and silver accents, with a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Crystal champagne glasses caught the light from the chandeliers, and servers in crisp black and white circulated with trays of hors d'oeuvres that looked like tiny works of art. I arrived early, wanting to help with any last-minute arrangements. I had worn my newer charcoal gray suit instead of the navy one, as Tyler had suggested. It had cost me a fair amount, and while not designer label, it was well-tailored and professional. Tyler greeted me with a quick hug. "Thanks for coming early. Everything looks great, right?" "It is beautiful," I agreed. "You and Jessica must be thrilled." "Mr. Lawrence spared no expense," Tyler said, glancing across the room where Harold was directing the staff with imperious gestures. Jessica stood beside him, radiant in a silvery dress that probably cost more than my monthly income. As more guests arrived, I began looking for my place card at the family table near the front of the room. After checking every place setting twice, I approached one of the event planners, a young woman with a tablet and an earpiece. "Excuse me, I cannot seem to find my seat. I am Alvin Peterson, the groom's brother." She scrolled through her tablet. "Peterson? Alvin. Yes, you are seated at table 14 near the gift table." I frowned. There must be some mistake. That is at the very back of the room. Shouldn't I be with my family at the main table? She gave me a sympathetic look. "I am just following the seating chart approved by the hosts. Table 14, by the gift table." I thanked her and started toward my parents, who were chatting with some of Harold's business associates near the bar. I needed to sort this out. But as I approached, I heard my name mentioned and instinctively stepped behind a decorative column. "What about Alvin?" my father was asking. He noticed he is not at the family table. Harold Lawrence's voice was dismissive. "I think it is best if he stays by the gift table. He can keep an eye on the presents and direct the staff if needed." "But he is our son," my mother said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Look," Harold said firmly, "this party is going to be attended by some very important people in my industry. Governors, senators, CEOs. Having someone like Alvin at the main table would bring down the tone, don't you think? No offense, but he is not exactly successful enough to be seated with such prominent guests." There was a pause, and then to my horror I heard my father say, "You make a good point, Harold. Alvin has always been modest in his achievements, not like Tyler." My mother added, "He does tend to underdress, even though we have told him repeatedly to invest in better clothes." I felt the blood drain from my face, then rush back in a burning flush. But the worst was yet to come. "What about Alvin?" I heard Tyler's voice now. My heart lifted momentarily, hoping my brother would defend me. "We were just discussing the seating arrangements," Harold explained smoothly. "Your parents agree that Alvin would be better suited to oversee the gift table area." There was a pause, and then Tyler said, "Oh, well, if you think that is best." His voice trailed off without any defense of me, without any acknowledgement of all I had done for him. In that moment, I felt something crack inside me. A foundation I had always trusted suddenly revealed to be built on sand. I stepped away quickly before they could see me, my face burning with humiliation. My own parents, my own brother, the family I had sacrificed so much for over the years, treating me like an embarrassing relative to be hidden away. I went to the restroom and locked myself in a stall, trying to control my breathing as waves of hurt and anger washed over me. Memories flooded back. The nights I had stayed up with Tyler helping him with homework while our parents worked late. The camping trips I had taken him on to give him some semblance of a normal childhood. The checks I had written for his education when I could barely afford my own rent. And this was how they repaid me. By agreeing I wasn't successful enough to sit with them, I splashed cold water on my face and looked at my reflection in the mirror. My charcoal suit was actually quite nice, I thought defiantly. Maybe not as expensive as Harold's, but professional and well-fitting. My watch was a graduation gift from my grandfather, old but classic. There was nothing about me that should make my family ashamed. Just then my phone vibrated. I pulled it from my pocket and saw the name, Marcus Williams, CEO of Westfield Developments. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail during a family event, but given what had just happened, I answered. Alvin Peterson speaking. Alvin, sorry to bother you on a weekend, but I needed to check if you had made a decision on the Lawrence Properties contract. The legal team is waiting for your evaluation before proceeding. I closed my eyes, an idea forming in my mind. I had been leaning toward recommending against the contract, already having spotted some concerning inconsistencies in the Lawrence Properties proposal. Now, I made my decision. Actually, Marcus, I was just about to call you. I have completed my analysis, and I cannot in good conscience recommend moving forward with Lawrence Properties. There are significant issues with their financial projections and some questionable business practices I uncovered during my research. There was a pause. That is a $7.2 million deal, Alvin. Are you certain? Absolutely, I said firmly. I would be happy to send you my complete analysis immediately. Please do. We trust your judgment, but the board will want to see the details. I will have it to you in 10 minutes, I promised. Then ended the call. Sitting in that bathroom stall, I pulled out my tablet and quickly compiled my notes on the Lawrence proposal, highlighting the concerning elements I had identified. I was not fabricating anything. The issues were real, though perhaps I might have been willing to suggest modifications rather than outright rejection under different circumstances. I sent the email, then took a deep breath and prepared to return to the party, to the gift table, where I apparently belonged. I took my assigned seat next to the gift table, nodding politely to the distant relatives and friends of Jessica who occupied the other chairs. They were clearly surprised to see the groom's brother relegated to their table, but were too polite to comment. I maintained a composed expression, giving no indication of the storm raging inside me. From my position, I had a clear view of the main table where my parents, Tyler, Jessica, and the Lawrences, sat among the important people Harold had mentioned. They were laughing and clinking glasses, not sparing a glance in my direction. The contrast between their jubilation and my isolation couldn't have been more stark. I made a brief professional call to Marcus Williams to confirm he had received my analysis of the Lawrence Properties deal. He had, and the Westfield legal team was already drafting a formal notification of their decision not to proceed with the contract. The board agrees with your assessment, Alvin, Marcus told me. We're notifying Lawrence Properties immediately, as this impacts some other time-sensitive projects. I ended the call just as Harold Lawrence stood to make a toast. He raised his glass, his face flushed with pride and champagne. To my beautiful daughter, Jessica, and her fine young man, Tyler, may your union bring as much joy as it brings. He paused for effect. Opportunity. The crowd laughed appreciatively at what was clearly an inside joke about business connections. I remained stone-faced, watching the seconds tick by on my watch. Harold's phone rang mid-toast, and he frowned in annoyance. He was about to silence it when he glanced at the screen. His expression changed instantly, the color draining from his face. He excused himself abruptly and stepped away from the table phone pressed to his ear. I could see his expression darken as he spoke with whoever was on the other end of the call. He gesticulated angrily, then froze his eyes, darting around the room until they landed squarely on me. Recognition, confusion, and then fury crossed his face in rapid succession. He ended the call and strode purposefully toward my table, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble floor. The conversations around us quieted as people sensed the tension. You, he said, pointing a finger at me. You are Alvin Peterson, the consultant who just tanked my deal with Westfield. I stood slowly, straightening my tie. Yes, Mr. Lawrence. I am Alvin Peterson, Senior Business Analyst for Westfield Developments. His face contorted with rage and confusion. But you are Tyler's underachieving brother, the one who works some small-time consulting gig. I work independently with several major corporations, Mr. Lawrence, I replied calmly. Westfield is one of my most valued clients. I have been evaluating your proposal for the past month. By now, a small crowd had gathered around us, including my parents and Tyler, who looked bewildered. You deliberately sabotaged that deal, Harold accused. This is a conflict of interest, a personal vendetta. I shook my head. My recommendation was based solely on the merits of the proposal. As I detailed in my report, there are significant discrepancies in your financial projections and some concerning patterns in your previous developments that raised red flags. I have a fiduciary responsibility to my client. This is because of where we seated you, Harold, scoffed incredulously. You're throwing away a $7.2 million deal over a petty seating arrangement. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. My parents exchanged alarmed glances as they realized what had happened. The seating arrangement had nothing to do with my professional assessment, I stated firmly. Though it does say a lot about character, doesn't it? About how people treat others they perceive as less valuable or less successful than themselves. Jessica pushed her way forward. You ruined my engagement party over a stupid seat. I turned to her. This party wasn't ruined by me, Jessica. It was compromised the moment your father decided that the brother of the groom wasn't good enough to sit with his family because he didn't match some arbitrary standard of success. My brother finally spoke up. Alvin, I had no idea you worked with Westfield. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have made a difference, Tyler? I asked quietly. Would you have defended me if you had known I had the power to affect your future father-in-law's business? Or is my worth as your brother only measured by what I can do for you? The silence that followed was deafening. I could see various reactions around the room. Some looked embarrassed, others intrigued by the drama, and a few, particularly my Uncle Robert and Cousin David, seemed almost approving. I took a deep breath and addressed the room. For years, I have been quietly building my career while supporting others. I helped put Tyler through college when our parents couldn't afford it. I have celebrated every one of his successes without ever asking for recognition. I kept my professional achievements private because I believed they weren't what defined me as a person or as a family member. I looked directly at my parents. When I heard you agree that I wasn't successful enough to sit at your table, that I would bring down the tone of this gathering, it confirmed what I've suspected for years. That, in your eyes, my value is measured only by outward appearances and social status. Harold tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. Mr. Lawrence, the Westfield decision stands on its own merits. I would have made the same recommendation regardless of today's events. But I won't pretend that learning how you and my family view me hasn't been illuminating. I straightened my shoulders and concluded I won't cause any further disruption to this celebration. Congratulations to Tyler and Jessica on your engagement. With that, I turned and walked calmly toward the exit, leaving stunned silence in my wake. I found myself sitting alone at the hotel bar, nursing a whiskey and trying to process the whirlwind of emotions. The bartender, sensing my mood, kept his distance after serving me, for which I was grateful. I needed space to think. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls, but I ignored them all. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone yet, especially not my family. The hurt was still too raw, the betrayal too fresh. Mind if I join you? I looked up to see my Uncle Robert, my father's older brother. Unlike my parents, Robert had always treated me with respect, recognizing my quieter strengths. Free country, I said, gesturing to the empty stool beside me. He ordered a scotch and sat in silence for a moment before speaking. That was quite a scene back there. I shrugged. Not my intention, but perhaps necessary, he observed. I always wondered when you would finally stand up for yourself. His words surprised me. You knew how they treated me. I have eyes, Alvin. Your parents have always favored Tyler, and you have always let them. You were the responsible one, the one who sacrificed while Tyler was the golden child who could do no wrong. I took another sip of my drink. I never resented helping Tyler. I love my brother. I know you do. That is what makes what happened today so sad. Robert shook his head. But I have to say, the look on Harold Lawrence's face when he realized who you really are professionally, that was something to behold. Despite everything, I found myself smiling slightly. Not my finest moment. Maybe not, but perhaps an honest one. My cousin David joined us shortly after, followed by a few other relatives who expressed their support. It was touching to realize that not everyone in my family had underestimated me all these years. The texts continued to pour in. Some from extended family expressing solidarity, others from Tyler, alternatively apologizing and asking how I could do this to him. My parents sent several messages trying to explain their actions, each one managing to incorporate another subtle criticism of my life choices. The most interesting message came from Marcus Williams. Whatever happened at that party, Lawrence is threatening legal action against both you and Westfield. Don't worry, our legal team says his case has no merit. Your analysis was sound and well documented. We stand behind your recommendation 100%. That night in my apartment, I alternated between vindication and doubt. Had I been petty? Had I allowed personal feelings to influence a professional decision? After hours of soul-searching, I concluded that while the timing was certainly influenced by what I had overheard, my actual recommendation was based entirely on the merits of the case. The Lawrence Properties proposal had genuine issues that would have made it a risky investment for Westfield. The next few days were difficult. Tyler called repeatedly, his tone shifting from anger to pleading. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" he demanded in our first conversation. "Jessica is threatening to call off the engagement. Her father has lost face with all his business associates. I am sorry if this has caused problems for you," I said sincerely. "But I did not create this situation, Tyler. I just refused to accept the role assigned to me. It was just a stupid seating chart," he protested. Was that really worth destroying everything over? It wasn't just a seating chart. It was being treated as less than by the people who should value me most. It was hearing my own brother fail to defend me after everything we have been through together. There was a long silence before Tyler spoke again, his voice quieter. "I didn't know about your job with Westfield. Would it have mattered?" I asked. "Would you have insisted I sit with the family if you had known I could affect Harold's business deal?" His hesitation told me everything I needed to know. My parents were equally difficult. They came to my apartment unannounced, my mother in tears, my father alternating between anger and awkward attempts at reconciliation. "We have always been proud of you, Alvin," my mother insisted. "We just worry that you don't present yourself in the best light." "What your mother means," my father added, "is that you could be so much more if you tried. Look at Tyler, how well he has done for himself." "By what measure?" I asked. "Financial success, social connections. I have built a career I am proud of, helping companies make better decisions. My clients respect me for my integrity and insight. Isn't that success too?" They exchanged glances, clearly not understanding. It was like we were speaking different languages. As for Harold Lawrence, the consequences extended beyond just the lost Westfield deal. Once word got out that Westfield had rejected the partnership due to concerns about Lawrence Properties' business practices, other potential partners began to scrutinize their dealings more carefully. Several other deals fell through in the following weeks, and Lawrence's reputation took a significant hit in the industry. He attempted to discredit me professionally, suggesting to anyone who would listen that I had acted out of personal spite. But Marcus Williams and the Westfield board stood firmly behind my analysis, and my professional reputation actually improved as other companies sought out my services. Throughout this turmoil, I struggled with mixed emotions. There was satisfaction in finally being recognized for my professional abilities, but also sadness at the damage to family relationships. I began seeing a therapist to process these complex feelings and the years of family dynamics that had led to this breaking point. Family relationships often fall into patterns that can be difficult to break, my therapist explained. You adopted the role of the supportive, self-sacrificing brother early on, and your family became comfortable seeing you that way. When you stepped out of that role, it disrupted everyone's understanding of how things should be. I also reconnected with friends I had neglected over the years while prioritizing family obligations. Their outside perspective helped me see that what I had accepted as normal was actually quite unbalanced. "Dude, I always wondered why you let them treat you like that," my friend Jake said over beers one night. "You are literally the most competent person I know." Gradually, I found peace through establishing clearer boundaries. I declined family gatherings where I didn't feel genuinely welcomed. I stopped offering financial help automatically and waited to be asked directly. I spoke more openly about my work and achievements, not to boast, but to correct the false narrative about my career. About 2 months after the engagement party disaster, Tyler asked to meet for coffee. He looked tired and had lost weight. Jessica and I are still together, he said, answering my unasked question. But things have been strained. Her father basically blames me for not knowing about your job and warning him. I am sorry for that, I said, meaning it. Despite everything, I didn't want Tyler to suffer. No, I am the one who should be sorry, Tyler said, looking me in the eye, perhaps for the first time in years. You have always been there for me, and when you needed me to stand up for you, I failed. I was so caught up in impressing Harold and fitting into their world that I forgot who really had my back all these years. It wasn't an instant fix. Trust once broken takes time to rebuild. But it was a start. My parents were slower to come around. They still occasionally made comments about my potential or how I could do better, but they were more careful about it, and I was more direct in pointing out these patterns when they emerged. As for Jessica's family, that bridge was permanently burned. I heard through industry channels that Harold Lawrence had to sell off some properties to cover cash flow issues after losing several major deals. Jessica still treated me coldly on the rare occasions we were in the same room, but there was also a new wariness in her eyes, a recognition that I wasn't the pushover she had initially judged me to be. I won't pretend the journey was easy. There were many nights I questioned my actions, wondered if I had overreacted or been too harsh. But with time and reflection, I became more confident in my decision to stand up for myself. I learned that self-respect isn't selfish, it is necessary. The most surprising outcome was how this event changed my approach to my own life. For years, I had defined myself primarily through my relationships with others, what I could do for them, how I could help them succeed. Now I began to consider my own needs and ambitions with the same seriousness. I expanded my consulting business, hired 2 associates, and took on more challenging projects. I bought a house I loved rather than settling for a practical apartment. I even started dating again, meeting a wonderful woman who values me for exactly who I am. Sometimes the people meant to value you the most see you the least until you show them exactly who you are. It shouldn't take a dramatic confrontation for family to recognize your worth, but sometimes that is what it takes to break entrenched patterns and beliefs. If my story resonates with you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to family who undervalued you? What boundaries have you set to protect your self-respect? Please like and subscribe if this story touched you, and share with someone who might need to hear that they deserve a blank de jais seat at the main table too. Thank you for listening to my journey from invisibility to being truly seen, even if it took a $7.2 million deal to make it happen.